The first game I modified was the first game I wrote. It was back then on a Commodore C64, and it was pretty easy. If you wanted to have one of these sprites, one of these enemies not to be red, you just changed the color code and it was green. So this was hardly modding in the sense we understand today, but some years later, it was with Command & Conquer Red Alert, it became more interesting because they gave us the tool to change some of the things in their game. So when you wanted to change the speed of your submarine, you just entered here 8 instead of 6. What you could do then additionally was create super units to do, well, pretty silly stuff. The interesting thing was then that when you did that, it meant that you changed the game. You could make your game pretty easy by just handing yourself a super unit that the computer did not get access to, and then you can dominate the battlefield pretty easily. So the thing was, when I played with some games and somebody said something in the like from I did beat this level in just 20 minutes, the people said okay, with modifications or without. And that's the thing, modifications can change the game dramatically. And the question is then, do we play still the same game? And the answer is of course no. So let's jump into the future 20 years to today. This is a creation from Space Engineers, and in Space Engineers, if you want to build a giant drill, you can build it in vanilla and it looks somehow like that. And there is a lot of ingenuity inside of this thing. It doesn't look like much, but believe me, it is. On the other hand, you can just download this mod. This mod does pretty much the same way, but way more comfortably and more efficient. So the thing is, in vanilla, all of us have the same equality of opportunity. We could all build this thing. On the other side, a modification creates a quality of outcome. If you are not able to create such thing as this, and most people are not able to do that, they can just download a modification and have the same result with less ingenuity, intelligence, sweat and tears and so on. And I think that this ruins games. Actually, I really think that modifications ruins games because back in the day, when there was no opportunity to create a modification and you posted your creation of Space Engineers and said I can do this and that with this machine, people said, oh, that's interesting, that's 10% better than my machine, so I have to tinker around and come up with a better design and so on and so on and so on. But with modifications, this all died. From the point on where modifications were a thing in Space Engineers, I did not watch any more creations of other people because it did not matter. It was absolutely uninteresting because one of them always had some modifications and they could do something that you can't do in vanilla, and in the end, from my perspective, it was just cheating. The interesting thing is that most of you don't see it that way because the whole mobile industry is built around that. You can either grind for 5 years on the same thing or you just invest 20 bucks. And a lot of you do because that's the reason these things exist. So the interesting thing there is that pretty much none of you will say, oh yeah, modifications, that's evil and stupid and it's cheating, because most of you will say something in the like of, I come to that point anyway, I just save some time, that's all, I could do it anyway. And the interesting thing is, this is exactly the thought of the communists. They say you have to redistribute the wealth of the poor because they could get there anyway, it just takes some time and it doesn't matter. So we just redistribute a little bit here and a little bit there because this all will lead to the outcome that normally all would achieve anyway, which is not true. And the same is not true with modified games, and the same is not true with pay-to-win games. You do not. So the interesting thing, so for me the world of games is interesting in vanilla. I only play vanilla games, except for some cosmetical stuff. Yeah, okay, that's another thing. But from a functional point of view, I do not care about mods, because when I use a mod that changes the game behavior in such a way that it makes my life as a gamer easier, it makes no sense to play this game anymore. But perhaps this might give you an insight into the thought process of a communist, because they pretty much say, oh, there's nothing bad with that, because it just pushes an outcome that would come anyway. And the same methodology is absolutely true with mobile gaming, and the same is true with modifications. The thing is, when you don't play by the same rules, if you change the rules, the outcome can't be compared with each other. There is absolutely no sense to compare two players who play Space Engineers right now if one of them has a mod installed. You can't compare that. It's absolutely impossible. You can't compare that. And this takes a lot of competition out of the game, which is sad, because I think it is interesting to see what you can do. Can I do it better than my neighbor? Am I worth in that sense? Do I have to do something to become better? I think the betterment of society is driven by competition, and I think it's kind of sad that we take a lot of competition out of computer games. So yeah, perhaps I see here something that doesn't exist, so tell me in the comment section, like, share and subscribe, and have a wonderful time.